Hello, my name is Simon. Welcome to Why Is That, a free speech platform where we explore big ideas and the controversies of our time. Hello, beloveds, and welcome back to another episode of Why Is That. I'm still recording the show, even though I was diagnosed with whiplash and a concussion today. Why is that? Mainly because lying in bed is boring. I tell you, getting in a car crash isn't the best way to finish off an awesome weekend away with the boys. Basically, on the way back home, somebody rammed into the back of our car at high speed. But we will soldier on. In today's show, we'll be covering the topic of freedom. Well, selective topics, at least. You know what the surefire recipe is for freedom? Basically, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and free markets. Oh, and of course, freedom of religion. Let's not forget that one. A lot of people would argue that being a free thinker is the end in itself, where in truth, it's the first step to finding truth. You see what I did there? Basically, freedom of speech allows for the free exchange of ideas. So ideas can be weighed on their merits. Free markets allow the reality of the markets to be discerned, where we've seen in history, like places like the Soviet Union, where it's warped by government intervention, things go really awry. Freedom of religion allows people to question their own religion and maybe change it. And what's the center of that? What is pretty much what they believe to be true. Freedom is the search for the truth. Some people might question that. I think we will agree nobody wants to live a lie because it's not real. And then somebody will say, well, what's true for you might not be true for me. You know, the whole relativist. There is absolutely no absolutes. Because if we acknowledge there are absolutes, then we'll have to conform to them, which you should do, because otherwise things become very unnatural and very unhealthy. And this is the problem with the initiation of force, to try to get people to believe in certain things, or at least go along with those beliefs, try to force people to associate or disassociate, try to limit people's economic liberty, etc. And our last show on the UC Berkeley riots are an example of this. A free speech advocate, Milo Yiannopoulos, tech editor at Breitbart News, went to give a speech and it was shut down because of a riot. An identifiably violent group in that riot was Antifa, which stands for anti-fascists, where it's funny because they act a lot like fascists. They try to shut down freedom of speech, freedom of association, and the free exchange of ideas that usually happen at these events. And violence is not an argument. You've pretty much lost if you resort to force, because your ideas obviously are not good enough to convince anyone. So you have to resort to very base measures. And of course, a lot of people, like myself, are very aware of violent protests and riots that happen to try to shut down free speech events and people making arguments. They don't make counter-arguments. And I've got a deep concern that will come here to New Zealand. I didn't mention on last week's show, but I looked for links between New Zealand and Antifa, and they had a left-wing activist posting on the Antifa Facebook page asking for obviously people from New Zealand to come and to help shut down a fascist and white supremacist event, which it was the National Front, I believe, which is a tiny, obscure group, which just ignore them. But you have these left-wing, middle-class activists who have been, well, who believe there are Nazis everywhere and term people fascists to dehumanize them and to shut them down of free speech, freedom of expression. I mean, how many people do you know who are actual fascists? No one. But a lot of people on the left term other people fascists, and in the clip I'm about to play from Sargon of Akkad, a real name Carl Benjamin, you can find him on YouTube, covers yet another example of violence coming out of the political left in North America, especially from universities. And if you look at history, there are so many student revolts where you have university students, going back centuries, rising up and for a better society and getting crushed because violence isn't the answer. But some people think it is.
It's professors like this who are encouraging their radical left-wing students to revolt and riot and cause trouble and attack people. There is a reason Berkeley happened. There was faculty in the fucking Antifa block. And there is a reason that 65,000 people have signed the petition to classify Antifa as a terrorist group. And I'll give you a perfect example of why. Leftist Fight Club trains University of Central Florida students to fight Republicans. The Knights for Socialism group at the University of Central Florida held a workshop Sunday to teach left-wing students how to, quote, bash the fash with a leftist fight club open to everyone but Republicans, who I guess are playing the fascists in this fucking LARPing fantasy. And like I've said in previous videos, I don't think these people are capable of overthrowing the government, but I do think they're capable of beating innocent civilians in the street for simply having a different political position to them. And that's only because we have so many fucking examples of it. How many people have to be hit with flagpoles or sprayed in the face or knocked unconscious or a guy getting shot? I mean, how far does this have to go before we say, right, okay, yeah, these are actually a domestic terrorist group and anyone associated with it is associating with a known terrorist group and should go on a terrorist watch list? The dean of the university only became aware of this when other students began to report the existence of the disturbing event because it was scaring them. This is the banner of the Facebook group of a club that is meeting at a university to teach people how to beat up Republicans. This is what is happening. How is this not a terrorist cell? Yes, I agree, they are nowhere near the IRA or your average Islamic State suicide bomber, but these people are still planning on using violence for political purposes, such as intimidation. And that's just what they're doing now. We don't know what they're going to be doing in 6 months' time, how much further they're going to escalate this. I mean, listen to the way they think. The event planners specifically urged women to attend because they expect a rise in sexual violence due to the election of Donald Trump. Ladies, the commander-in-chief is a sexual predator and a rapist. He has normalized sexual assault, and it is expected that sexual violence against women is going to skyrocket in the next 12 months. Please join us, there will be other women there for you to spar against. That's a fucking unhinged point of view. I mean, I've got no other way of describing it. No, he hasn't normalized sexual assault. You fucking idiots. Seriously though, I actually do think the radical Marxist left are a time bomb. I think that there is going to be some severe political violence coming out of there in the near future. And I think it's something we really should be worried about.
Now, freedom doesn't do well in the wild, as to say, freedom is kind of a social construct. I think a lot of people who are freedom advocates, and I love you, focus too heavily on the individual, where, of course, the individual is key, but no man is an island. Freedom is very important for a right and just society, so that helps people get along. So some groups, or we say associations, are violent, and we deem them terrorist groups. And you can say, well, isn't that freedom of expression? Well, no. Once you initiate force, it breaks down society, and when society breaks down, people tend not to be so social, shall we say. So people find it hard to exercise their rights, exercise their freedoms that stem from natural law, and hopefully the civil law is in union with that. I found out today the origin of the word kind comes from kindred, which means related. So if you're kind to someone, you treat them like family. And of course, in ideal situations, you love your family. Well, of course, I recognize not everyone has ideal family circumstances, but of course the ideal is, in what many people, about to certain degrees, is a loving family. Now, while we're in the area of talking about free speech and love, I will play a clip I did I archive the show on YouTube, so you can look up Why Is That Radio Show on YouTube for past shows. But I do some web exclusive stuff. So this is Free Speech is About Love. Free speech is about love. So often we focus on free speech as the right to offend, because so many people these days are trying to shut people down by going, I'm offended. This is offensive. In fact, this is hurtful. I need a safe space. What that is repression. You have the wrong opinions. You are to shut up. If you're a good little drone, pushing the opinions of the hive mind, then they pretend to love you, but accidentally turn left when they will turn right. They'll turn on you. You know, they might give you the illusion that you have your free choice, or expressing yourself by dyeing your hair blue, or something like that. But at the end of the day, they don't want a you, they want a drone. But we want a you. We love you. We want you to be able to speak freely. We want you to express yourself. Because if you don't, how would we know who you are? And this is the big thing about why free speech is about love. For people to love each other, they have to know who the other one is. You kind of know who you are. It's arguable, you might not know yourself so well, but the other has to reveal themselves to you. Sometimes people become obsessed about somebody because they have this idea about them, this idealized version. That's no different than being a drone, because that is projection. The reality. We want to know what you're really thinking. As in that, we discover who you really are, and that's who we really want to know. If you look at certain relationships where couples can't talk about certain topics because that will cause trouble, we don't go, that's a great relationship. Something that relationship has broken down. The great relationships are ones where you can disagree and still have a relationship afterwards. Whether you be friends or a couple, knowing that you can express yourself. You might even get into an argument, but you know full well the relationship will endure because you know and love the other one. And even if somebody had what would be deemed a wrong opinion, it is an act of love to hear them out, let them express themselves with their free speech, and then use your words to try to convince them. We know that's a loving way of doing it because we look at people yelling at others, trying to shut them down, trying to no-platform them, and we can look at that and accurately assess that's an act of hate. They don't care about you. They want to win by forcing you. It's a conflict where reasonable discussion is a negotiation. Even if you think the person trying to correct you is wrong, you can still appreciate they're trying to make your life better the best way they know how. And in that caring is the bedrock for a lot of relationships, because you care about the other. Where if you're looking for somebody just to reflect you, that's a form of narcissism. And narcissism is a cluster B personality disorder, right up there with being a sociopath or pathological liar. The three of them sort of interlink. If we look at some social justice warriors, you think sociopath. And finally, the core of any relationship is trust. So it's just not free speech. You have to speak truth, whether it be truth to power or the truth to your friend or significant other. Honesty is really the best policy. You can't make somebody love you. If you're using lies, it's not really love, because it's not the real you. And the real you deserves to be loved. Love needs to be freely given. And for that, there needs to be freedom. And for freedom, you need free speech. Do you see how this works? So for an open and loving society, instead of a forced and collectivist hellhole, please, for the love of God, speak freely and lovingly and truthfully. So if you're wondering before if the early bit of the show was just crazy concussion talk, no, that's what I usually sound like, going on these little rants. And it's odd, this is a dialogue that's going on in the wider culture. I mean, post the election of Trump, this whole thing about fake news, all of a sudden everyone started to care about truth officially. Because as the logic follows, if you're lying to us, you're doing so to try to control us. And if you're trying to control us, well, you're trying to take away our freedom. And make no mistake, boys and girls, the mainstream media has been trying to take away your freedom, has been trying to tell you what to think, and has been keeping things from you. This was the brilliant thing about WikiLeaks and the Podesta emails, John Podesta being Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, and just the level it exposed how in bed the Clinton campaign and the media were, that John Podesta was hosting dinners for reporters from all the top networks at his house, reporters submitting to the Clinton campaign articles for the approval before they sent them to their editors. The mainstream media was trying to control the narrative. Just parrots what the US mainstream media and the BBC say. They're not independent thinkers at all. And of course, it's not hard to see what side of the political spectrum the media is favouring. Spoiler alert, it's the left. Now, the left used to be liberal, but now progressives dominate the left politically in the Anglosphere, or the English-speaking Western countries. And there are many leftist classical liberals who I sympathise as I see the left going this way. One of them is Dave Rubin, who has the Rubin Report on YouTube, a very good talk show I suggest you check out. Now, I'm about to play a clip of his for Prager University, which isn't an actual university, but it has a lot of university lecturers and other intellectuals on there that give talks. Go and check them out. But here is Dave Rubin talking about his, political awakening about the progressives. Listen for yourself.
Do you believe in free speech? Do you believe that people should be judged by their character, not their skin color? Do you believe in freedom of religion? If you believe these things, you're probably not a progressive. You might think you're a progressive. I used to think I was. My show, The Rubin Report, was originally part of the Progressive Young Turks Network. Progressives struck me as liberals, but louder. Progressives were the nice guys. They looked out for the little guy. They cared about women and minorities. They embraced change. In short, who wouldn't want to be a progressive? But over the last couple of years, the meaning of the word progressive has changed. Progressives used to say, I may disagree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. Not anymore. Banning speakers whose opinions you don't agree with from college campuses, that's not progressive. Prohibiting any words not approved of as politically correct. That's not progressive. Putting trigger warnings on books, movies, music, anything that might offend people, that's not progressive either. All of this has led me to believe that much of the left is no longer progressive, but regressive. This is one of the reasons I've spent so much time on my show talking about the regressive left. This regressive ideology doesn't judge people as individuals, but as a collective. If you're black or female or Muslim or Hispanic or member of any other minority group, you're judged differently than the most evil of all things, a white Christian male. The regressive left ranks minority groups in a pecking order to compete in a kind of oppression Olympics. Gold medal goes to the most offended. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream that his children would be judged by their character and not their skin color was a liberal idea, but these days it's not a progressive ideal. And what about religious freedom, the idea that no one else can tell you what you have to believe? Surely progressives still support that basic right. Well, not so much. I'm a married gay man, so you might think that I appreciate the government forcing a Christian baker or photographer or florist to act against their religion in order to cater, photograph, or decorate my wedding. But you'd be wrong. A government that can force Christians to violate their conscience can force me to violate mine. If a baker won't bake you a cake, find another baker. Don't demand that the state tell him what to do with his private business. I'm pro-choice, but a government that can force a group of Catholic nuns, literally called the Little Sisters of the Poor, to violate their faith and pay for abortion-inducing birth control can force anyone to do anything. That's not progressive, that's regressive. Today's progressivism has become a faux moral movement hurling charges of racism, bigotry, xenophobia, homophobia, Islamophobia, and a slew of other meaningless buzzwords at anyone they disagree with. The battle of ideas has been replaced by a battle of feelings, and outrage has replaced honesty. Diversity reigns supreme as long as it's not that pesky diversity of thought. This isn't the recipe for a free society, it's a recipe for authoritarianism. For these reasons, I can no longer call myself a progressive. I don't really call myself a Democrat either. I'm a classical liberal, a free thinker, and as much as I don't like to admit it, defending my liberal values has suddenly become a conservative position. So if you think people should be able to say what they think without being punished for it, that people should be judged by their behavior, not their skin color, and that people should be able to live the way that they want to live without government interference, then there's not much left on the left for you. I'll keep trying to explain that to progressives until I'm totally left out. I'm Dave Rubin of the Rubin Report for Prager University.
Now that was Dave Rubin, and another gay Jew that has been accused of being a Nazi, strangely enough. I highly recommend you go on YouTube and check out the Rubin Report. He talks with people from all bits of the political spectrum and different cultural backgrounds, and has very honest conversations with them, and will be far greater intellectual conversation than what you'll get on TV. Something of a dying medium these days. But you know what isn't? Radio, baby. TV is going to be killed off by the internet, and radio is still going to be going. Just on a side note, you know what's interesting? You can get dial-up radio over radio frequencies. So if you've got like a walkie-talkie thing, you can blurt the dial-up over it and get internet access. This is a way they're trying to get the internet available in third world countries where there are not phone lines or cables to run in for the internet. In fact, during things like the Arab Spring, they had what was called freedom technology, which were things like, internet routers that were in suitcases that could be transported around the place, but people could link into to get internet access, to get past the authoritarian government's blocking of the internet, to go on the wider internet. All, of course, supplied by the Americans. Because nothing says freedom like regime change. Oh, dear Lord. But of course, as we've seen with the American election, basically what won it for Trump when pretty much 90-something% of the media, the mainstream media, were against him, were alternative platforms, all available online. An example is Donald Trump's Twitter account, where you didn't have to rely on the media. You could just directly go to see what the man himself said. And other online platforms which people could use to exercise their free speech and give people freedom of choice. Because the internet is all about freedom. Although, of course, now with the end of net neutrality, thank you, Obama, now certain people control the internet, and with the handover, it's not going to change overnight, but there'll be gradual creeping changes where people will try to control the narrative by controlling the internet, like in China, where they control internet access. It's often referred to as the Great Firewall of China, although there are people who know ways to get around it, but still, if you're not that informed, it's a lot harder. And you wouldn't say China is a free society, being a communist authoritarian regime and all, which does not have free speech and does not have free markets. Although in some areas there is what's called special economic zones, basically little capitalist havens, because they recognize capitalism does generate great wealth. It's just under the communist socialist model, they have far more control of the populace. Actually, if you look into a lot of third world dictatorships, they are not in the habit of doing things like building roads that connect communities, so to purposely isolate them so it's easier to control them. Because if they're free to speak amongst themselves, then, well, they could complain about the status quo. There's a brilliant video that covers this by a YouTuber called CGP Grey, called The Rules for Rulers. It's a brilliant video. I mean, I've got a political studies degree, and I'd say everything he says on it is spot on. It's how you'd be a ruler if you're a dictator or if you're running for democracy, and how certain elements of both are very similar. Why both of them have certain restrictions. Can 2.7 million subscribers be wrong? Well, yes, but I don't think they are in this case. You will notice on the show I refer people onto YouTube all the time. Why is that? Well, pretty much there's a lot more intelligent content on YouTube than there is on the TV. Now, of course, there's also a whole lot of stupid stuff and cat videos. Well, actually, everyone loves cat videos. But the main thing is, ditch the very unintelligent mainstream media, and especially TV in New Zealand is just so stupid. And it's a time stealer. You'll sit down, you'll waste hours watching it a week, which could have been spent on a lot better things. I gave up TV a long time ago. That doesn't mean I don't watch stuff online, etc. But the difference is I get to control what I watch and get to take in more intelligent things. And you can look up areas that you always want to know more about. So I hope that was all clear and not crazy concussion talk. So yes, search truth. Look up the Rubin Report on YouTube. There's hours and hours of great interviews. And next week we will have a very special guest who I'm sure would not agree with me on many, many things, but it's always good to have civil conversation with people you disagree with. And it's an opportunity to learn more. And as always, you can always go on the planetaudio.org website and download our many great shows like mine. See you next time.